The dust never settled on Nexus 7. It hung in the air like a dirty curtain, making every breath taste like metal and ash. Pulled her medical mask higher on her face as she walked through the ruins of what used to be a farming settlement. The war had come through here 3 days ago, and now there was nothing left but broken buildings and scattered supplies. She shouldn't be out here alone. The other medics had told her it was too dangerous, but the refugee camp needed medicine and someone had to search the abandoned areas. Had volunteered because she always did. That was just who she was. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Checked her scanner one more time. There was supposed to be a medical station nearby, one that might still have supplies. She walked carefully over broken concrete and twisted metal, her boots crunching on debris. That was when she heard it, a sound that didn't belong, a groan, low and pained. Froze, her heart started beating faster. It could be anyone, a survivor from the settlement, a wounded soldier from either side, or something worse. But she was a medic. She had taken an oath. She couldn't just walk away. She followed the sound to a collapsed building. Half the structure had fallen in on itself, creating a small shelter from the wind. And there, covered in dust and blood, was a soldier. But not a human soldier. His breath caught in her throat. The figure was tall, taller than any human, with skin that had a faint blue-gray tint. Even covered in dirt, she could see strange markings on his face and arms that seemed to glow dimly. Of the enemy. Every logical part of her brain screamed at her to leave. They were the reason the war had started. They were the ones attacking human colonies. If he woke up, he might kill her. If anyone found out she helped him, she could be arrested for treason. But he was dying. She could see that clearly. His breathing was shallow and irregular. Blood pooled beneath him from multiple wounds. He had maybe a few hours left, probably less. Stood there for a long moment, frozen between fear and duty. Then she saw his hand twitch slightly, reaching for nothing, and she made her choice. She knelt beside him and opened her medical bag. Working quickly, assessed his injuries. A deep wound in his side, probably from an energy weapon. Burns on his chest and arms. A head injury that had bled heavily. She didn't know anatomy perfectly, but the basics were similar enough to humans. Blood was blood. Wounds were wounds. She cleaned and sealed the worst injuries with medical gel. She injected him with broad-spectrum antibiotics and pain medication, hoping the dosages would work on his alien biology. She wrapped bandages around his torso and head. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, the same way they had for hundreds of other patients. But her mind raced. What was she doing? This was insane. If he died anyway, she would have wasted precious supplies. If he lived, he might kill her. If anyone found out, her life was over. Yet she kept working. It took her 2 hours to stabilize him enough to move. She couldn't take him back to the camp. They would never allow it. Instead, she remembered the medical station she had been searching for. If it was still standing, it might have power and supplies. Managed to drag the unconscious soldier onto a piece of metal sheeting and pull him across the ruined ground. He was incredibly heavy, and every meter felt like a kilometer. By the time she found the medical station, her arms were shaking with exhaustion. The station was damaged but functional. Emergency power still worked, giving her lights and basic equipment. Got the onto an examination table and continued treating his injuries properly. She set up an IV drip, monitored his vital signs, and did everything she could to keep him alive. Then she sat down on the floor, suddenly overwhelmed by what she had done. For 3 days, traveled between the refugee camp and the secret medical station. She told the other medics she was searching for supplies in different areas. She brought food and medicine to the soldier, checking his wounds and changing his bandages. He remained unconscious, but his condition slowly improved. On the 4th day, his eyes opened. Was replacing his IV bag when she felt him staring at her. She turned and met his gaze. His eyes were a striking amber color, bright and alert despite his injuries. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then he tried to sit up, grimacing in pain. Immediately moved to stop him, pushing gently on his shoulder. He was still too weak to resist. "Don't move," she said firmly, though she knew he probably couldn't understand her. "Your injuries aren't healed yet." He stared at her, confusion clear on his face. His mouth moved and sounds came out, but they were nothing like any language knew. Harsh, clicking syllables that meant nothing to her. Reached for her universal translator, a small device that most colonists carried. It wasn't perfect, but it should help. She clipped it to her collar and gestured for him to speak again. He did, slowly this time. The translator processed the sounds and converted them into words she could understand. "Why?" His voice was deep and rough from disuse. "Why help me?" Considered the question. Why had she? She could give him a dozen reasons, all of them true, because she was a medic, because he was dying, because mercy wasn't conditional on uniform or species. But in the end, she gave the simplest answer. Because it was the right thing to do. He stared at her for a long time. Something shifted in his expression, something she couldn't quite read. Then he spoke again, his voice quieter. "I am your enemy." "You were wounded and dying," replied. "That made you my patient." Over the next several days, they developed a strange routine. Would visit, check his wounds, bring food and water. At first, as he told her his name was, remained wary and quiet. But gradually, they began to talk. The translator helped bridge the gap between their languages. Learned that had lost her family in the war. Her parents and younger brother had died when forces attacked their colony. Yet here she was, saving the life of a soldier. He couldn't understand it. Learned that was a soldier, but he spoke little of his life before the war. He seemed educated and spoke with an authority that suggested rank, but he never confirmed it. She didn't press. Some things were better left unknown. On the 8th day, arrived at the medical station to find standing, testing his weight on his legs. He had healed remarkably fast. Soon he would be strong enough to leave, to return to whatever remained of his unit. "They're coming," said without preamble. "I heard your people talking on the comm channels. Federation patrols will sweep this area tomorrow." Felt a chill run through her. If they found, they would kill him. If they found out she had helped him, she would be arrested. "You need to leave tonight," she said. Nodded. He looked at her for a long moment, and something passed between them. An understanding. A connection forged in impossible circumstances. He reached to his hand and removed a ring. It was simple but clearly valuable, made of a dark metal with strange symbols etched into it. He took his hand and pressed the ring into her palm, closing her fingers around it. He spoke in his own language, and the translator converted his words. "I will remember you, healer. This I swear." Before could respond, moved to the door. He paused once, looking back at her, then disappeared into the night. Stood alone in the medical station, holding the mysterious ring. She had no idea what it meant. She had no idea if she would ever see him again. But something told her that this moment, this choice she had made, would matter more than she could possibly imagine. She slipped the ring onto a chain around her neck and began cleaning up the medical station, erasing every trace that anyone had been there. 5 years had passed since the war ended. The peace was fragile and uncertain, but it held. Had left Nexus 7 as soon as she could, returning to the outer colonies where she took a position at a civilian hospital. The work was hard but peaceful. No more bombs, no more soldiers, just ordinary people with ordinary problems. She had tried to forget about the war, about the destruction, about the strange soldier she had saved in secret. But late at night, when she couldn't sleep, her hand would reach for the ring she still wore on a chain around her neck. She had never told anyone about it. It was her secret, her reminder that even in the darkest times, there had been moments of connection. Was finishing her shift at the hospital when she heard the news. It came across every broadcast channel at once, interrupting regular programming. The emperor was dead. So was the crown prince. Both killed in what the reports called a tragic accident, though the careful wording suggested something more sinister. The galaxy held its breath. Who would rule the empire now? Would the succession crisis reignite the war? Human colonies reinforced their defenses, fearing the worst. 3 days later, the answer came. The third prince, a figure most people had never heard of, would take the throne. His name was. Dropped the medical tablet she was holding. It clattered on the floor, but she didn't notice. Could it be? The same? No, it was impossible. It had to be a common name. Her had been a simple soldier, hadn't he? But doubt gnawed at her. She remembered the way he carried himself, the authority in his voice, the valuable ring he had given her. What if? She told herself she was being ridiculous. Even if it was the same person, he had probably forgotten about her long ago. She was just one human among billions, one medic who had treated his wounds, nothing more. The new emperor gave his first address to the galaxy. Watched it on the hospital's common room screen, along with dozens of other staff members. Everyone wanted to see what kind of leader they would have. The image of emperor filled the screen. He was tall and imposing, wearing ceremonial armor that gleamed under the palace lights. His face was stern and regal, and familiar, so terribly, impossibly familiar. His breath stopped. It was him, the soldier she had saved, the man she had hidden and healed and helped escape. He was the emperor of the empire. What had she done? In the weeks that followed, Emperor proved himself to be an unusual leader. He maintained the peace with the Federation. He spoke of honor and duty. And strangest of all, he issued a request through diplomatic channels. The Empire was seeking information about medical personnel who had served on Nexus 7 during the final year of the war. Federation officials were confused and suspicious. Why would the new emperor care about human medics? What was he planning? But they compiled the information anyway, trying to maintain the fragile peace. His name was in that database, along with thousands of others. She thought nothing of it. How could she know that intelligence was cross-referencing every name, checking every record, looking for one specific person? 2 months after took the throne, a ship arrived at its colony. It was a diplomatic vessel carrying official representatives from both the Federation and the Empire. The colony governor was informed that they were seeking a specific individual. They were looking for. The officials arrived at her hospital in the middle of her shift, was treating a patient when her supervisor found her, looking pale and worried. There are people here to see you, government people from both sides. Fear shot through his chest. Had they found out? After 5 years, had someone discovered what she had done? She was going to be arrested for treason. Her life was over. But she held her head high as she walked to the hospital's conference room. If this was the price of her choice, she would pay it. She didn't regret saving a life, even if that life belonged to someone who was now the most powerful person in the galaxy. The delegation consisted of 4 people, 2 humans in Federation uniforms, 2 in elegant diplomatic robes. They all stood when she entered, which surprised her. Criminals weren't usually shown such courtesy. "Doctor," one of the human officials asked. "Just," she corrected quietly. "I'm a medic, not a doctor." "Medic," the official continued. "We understand you served on Nexus 7 during the war. Is that correct?" "Yes." "The Empire has made a request. Emperor himself has asked for you to travel to the for an audience with him." Stared at them, unable to process the words. An audience with the Emperor. "I don't understand," she said slowly. "Why would the Emperor want to see me?" The officials exchanged glances. The representative spoke, his translator rendering his words into smooth human speech. "His Imperial Majesty was very specific in his request. He wishes to honor you for services rendered during the war." Services rendered. Such formal words for hiding a wounded soldier and keeping him alive. "I can't," said immediately. "I have patients here. I have responsibilities." "Your hospital will be compensated," the human official said. "Temporary staff will be brought in. This is a matter of diplomatic importance. The Emperor specifically requested you." Shook her head. "I'm sorry, but I don't want to go. Thank you for the invitation, but my answer is no." She stood to leave, but the official spoke again. "Excuse me, medic, but is that the imperial ring you wear around your neck?" His hand flew to the ring, which had slipped out from under her shirt. She had worn it for so long that she forgot it was visible. The eyes widened. He and his companion immediately bowed deeply. The human officials looked confused. "That is the personal seal of Emperor," the said with something close to awe. "How did you come to possess such a thing?" Realized she had made a terrible mistake. She had revealed the one piece of evidence that connected her to. There was no hiding now. "He gave it to me," she said quietly. "Years ago, I didn't know what it was." The officials talked among themselves in urgent whispers. Finally, the human representative turned to her with a serious expression. "Medic, this changes things. That ring is a royal artifact. The Emperor wouldn't have given it to just anyone. We strongly recommend you accept this invitation. Refusing could be seen as a diplomatic insult. And if the Emperor has marked you as someone under his personal protection," the added, "refusing his invitation could cause complications." Felt trapped. She had saved a man's life out of compassion, asking nothing in return. She didn't want rewards or recognition. She certainly didn't want to be dragged into galactic politics, but it seemed she had no choice. "How long would I be gone?" she asked. "We don't know," the human official admitted. "But your needs will be provided for. You have our word." Thought about refusing again, but she could see in their faces that this was bigger than her. If she refused, it might damage the peace. It might cause problems for her colony, her hospital, innocent people who had nothing to do with her choices. "When do we leave?" she asked quietly. "Tomorrow," the official said. "The Emperor has been waiting for this meeting for quite some time." That night packed a small bag with her few possessions. She said goodbye to her colleagues, though she couldn't tell them where she was really going. The hospital staff thought she was being called away for some Federation medical program. As she lay in bed for the last time in her small quarters, pulled out the ring and looked at it closely. In the lamplight, she could see the intricate symbols carved into the metal, a royal seal. She had been carrying it for 5 years, never knowing what it meant. She thought about the wounded soldier who had thanked her so earnestly. He had become emperor of the most powerful empire in the galaxy, and somehow, impossibly, he had remembered her. He had searched for her across the stars. Didn't know whether to be honored or terrified. Probably both. But tomorrow, she would find out what it meant when someone who commanded billions of people decided they owed you a debt. She slipped the ring back around her neck and tried to sleep, though her mind raced with questions that had no answers. Not yet. There was nothing like had imagined. From the viewport of the diplomatic ship, she could see massive cities of crystalline towers that caught the sunlight and scattered it into rainbows. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks covered in what looked like flowing lights rather than snow. It was beautiful and alien and overwhelming. A human ambassador named met at the spaceport. She was an older woman with kind eyes and a professional manner that immediately put at ease. "I'll be accompanying you to the palace," explained as they boarded a transport vehicle. "I'm here to help you navigate customs and to ensure you're treated appropriately." "Do you know why the Emperor wants to see me?" asked. Gave her a curious look. "No one knows. The entire diplomatic community is trying to figure it out. An emperor doesn't usually request specific civilians from other species. It's very unusual." The transport carried them through the capital city, stared out the window at the people going about their daily lives. They looked less frightening here, without armor and weapons. Families walked together. Children played in parks. It reminded her that they were just people like humans trying to live their lives. The imperial palace rose above the city like a mountain made of crystal and metal. It was enormous, easily the size of a small city by itself. Guards in ceremonial armor stood at every entrance, their faces unreadable. Inside was taken to guest quarters that were more luxurious than anywhere she had ever stayed. The room was huge, with a bed that could fit 4 people and windows that looked out over the entire city. Servants brought her food and offered to attend to any need she might have. "Why are they treating me like this?" asked, bewildered. "I'm not sure," admitted, "but palace staff have been instructed to treat you with the highest respect. Someone very important must have given those orders." For 2 days, waited in the palace. She was shown around by an official named who seemed to be some kind of military commander. He was formal but not unfriendly, answering her questions about culture and history. "You seem nervous," observed as they walked through one of the palace gardens on the second day. "I am," admitted. "I don't understand why I'm here. I'm just a medic from a small colony. I'm nobody important." Gave her a strange look. "The Emperor believes you are important. That is all that matters." On the third day, was summoned to the throne room. Helped her dress in formal clothing, though they kept it simple and human rather than trying to imitate styles. "Remember," said as they walked through the palace corridors, "bow when you enter. Don't speak unless spoken to. Be respectful but honest. Value directness." His heart was pounding as massive doors opened before her. The throne room was vast, with a high ceiling supported by pillars that glowed with internal light. Dozens of nobles and officials lined the walls, all watching her with curious eyes. And at the far end, sitting on a throne of dark metal and crystal, was. He looked different than she remembered, more imposing. His armor was elaborate and covered in royal symbols. His face was stern and regal, but his eyes, those amber eyes, were the same. Walked forward on shaking legs. She bowed as had instructed, keeping her head down. "You may rise," a voice said. Voice speaking perfect human language now. Looked up and met his gaze across the distance of the throne room. For a moment, the years fell away, and she was back in that medical station, watching a wounded soldier wake up and look at her with confusion and wonder. Then stood. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. He walked down from his throne, his footsteps echoing in the silence. He walked past his guards, past his advisors, past every protocol and tradition, and stopped directly in front of. And then, to the shock of everyone watching, Emperor knelt before her. Gasps echoed through the throne room. Several of the guards moved forward, unsure what to do, looked like she might faint, but ignored all of them, his eyes fixed on. "You saved my life," he said clearly, his voice carrying through the chamber, "when you had every reason to let me die. You risked everything to show mercy to an enemy. I have become what I am today because you showed me that honor transcends species and that compassion is the truest form of strength." Felt tears prick at her eyes. "Please stand up," she said quietly. "You're an emperor. You shouldn't kneel to anyone, especially not me." "I kneel before the person I owe my life to," said. "That is a greater debt than any throne can measure." He stood, but the damage was done. The entire court had seen their emperor kneel before a human, could feel the stares, hear the whispers. She wanted to disappear. Seemed to sense her discomfort. He waved his hand and most of the courtiers filed out, leaving only a few trusted advisors. The massive doors closed, and suddenly the room felt smaller, more intimate. "I'm sorry," said, his voice softer now. "I should have warned you, but I needed my court to understand that you are under my personal protection. No one will dare harm or disrespect you now." "You didn't have to do that," said. "I didn't save you for rewards or recognition. I was just doing what was right." "I know," said. "That's exactly why I wanted to honor you. In culture, I owe you a life debt. You have the right to ask anything of me, and I am bound by honor to grant it. Shook her head. I don't want anything. I just want to go home and back to my work. Anything? Asked. There must be something. Thought about it. She thought about the war, about all the death and suffering she had seen. She thought about the fragile peace that could shatter at any moment, and she knew what she wanted. Peace, she said firmly. Real peace between our peoples. Not just a ceasefire, but understanding, cooperation. A future where no one has to choose between their duty and their conscience like I did. Was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, and it transformed his whole face. It was the same smile she remembered from that medical station, when he had looked at her with genuine gratitude. That is the thing anyone has asked of me since I took this throne, he said. And the most difficult, but I will try, I swear it. Over the next few days and talked privately. She learned that he had been sent to fight in the war to prove himself worthy of the throne. He had been a third prince, ignored and underestimated. But the war had changed him, and her act of mercy had changed him even more. I spent months thinking about what you did, said as they walked through the palace gardens. You had lost your family to my people. You had every reason to hate me, but you chose compassion instead. It made me question everything I had been taught about strength and honor. I'm not special, insisted. Any good medic would have done the same. No, said, they wouldn't have. Most people human or would have walked away. You didn't, that makes you extraordinary. But not everyone in the palace was happy about his presence. She could feel the suspicious looks from certain nobles. She heard whispers that the emperor was being influenced by a human, that he was showing weakness. One noble in particular, a man named, made his disapproval clear. He approached one day in the palace corridors, his face cold. You don't belong here, he said bluntly. The emperor may be blind to it, but you are a threat to our people. I'm a medic, replied calmly. I'm not a threat to anyone. You are changing him, said, making him soft. An emperor cannot afford mercy, especially not to humans. Before could respond, appeared, moving between them with a stern expression. The emperor has declared this woman under his protection, said coldly. If you have complaints, take them to him. Otherwise, keep your opinions to yourself. Left, but his words stayed with. Was she really changing? And if she was that a good thing, or was she putting him in danger? That night made an announcement. Would remain at the palace as his personal advisor on human affairs and as an honored guest. He made it clear that she had his complete trust and protection. You don't have to do this, told him privately. I can leave. I don't want to cause problems for you. You're not causing problems, said. You're helping me be the leader I want to be, not the one others expect me to be. Please stay, at least for a while. Help me build the peace you asked for. Looked at him and saw genuine hope in his eyes. Hope that she could help make a difference. Hope that the mercy she had shown years ago could grow into something bigger. All right, she said finally. I'll stay, but I'm keeping my medical clinic. If I'm going to be here, I'm going to be useful. Laughed, and it was a sound of pure relief and joy. I wouldn't expect anything less from you. 6 months passed, and had built a life on that she never expected. True to her word, she had established a medical clinic in the palace grounds. At first, only a few brave came, curious about the human healer. But word spread quickly that she was skilled and kind, treating everyone with the same care regardless of their status. Soon, common citizens were traveling to the palace just to be treated by her. Found herself working long hours, but she didn't mind. This was what she knew how to do. This was who she was. Emperor visited her clinic often, sometimes officially to inspect the facility, but more often just to talk. They had developed an easy friendship built on mutual respect and shared experiences. Found herself looking forward to these visits, to the conversations that ranged from politics to medicine to simple observations about life. You're teaching my people to see humans differently, said one evening as he helped her organize medical supplies. He had insisted on helping, waving away his guards' protests. "I'm just treating patients," said, "same as I always have." "That's exactly the point," replied. "You show them through actions, not words, that humans are compassionate and skilled. It's more effective than any diplomatic speech." But's influence extended beyond the clinic, often asked for her opinion on various matters. What would humans think about this policy? How might this decision affect human colonies? Her perspective helped him see issues from angles he had never considered. Slowly, changes began to appear in the Empire. New guidelines for prisoner treatment that emphasized dignity. Medical aid programs for planets affected by the war, including human worlds. Military protocols that prioritized negotiation before force. Each reform was small, but together they represented a shift in thinking. Not everyone was pleased, and his supporters saw these changes as weakness. They believed the emperor was being controlled by the human woman, that he was abandoning values in favor of softness and mercy. The first assassination attempt came on a quiet afternoon. Was walking through the palace gardens when someone fired an energy weapon at her from a hidden position. The shot would have killed her, but threw himself in the way, his armor absorbing most of the blast. The assassin was caught, a young soldier influenced by rhetoric. His response was immediate and terrifying. He arrived at the medical bay where was being checked for injuries, his face darker than she had ever seen it. Had survived, but he was badly hurt. "Who did this?" demanded, his voice cold as ice. When he learned about his involvement, called an immediate council meeting. Tried to tell him it wasn't necessary, that she was fine, but he wouldn't listen. "You are under my protection," said. "An attack on you is an attack on me. This cannot stand." The political fallout was intense. Supporters argued that the assassination attempt, while regrettable, proved their point. The emperor was too concerned with protecting one human. His judgment was compromised. For weeks, the palace was tense with political maneuvering. Felt guilty, knowing she was the cause of this turmoil. She offered several times to leave, but refused to even discuss it. "You're not the problem," he told her firmly. "They are, and they need to learn that the empire I lead will be different from the one they knew." Then made his move. He presented evidence to the council that a human colony had violated the peace treaty, launching an unauthorized attack on an outpost. He demanded a military response, a show of force to prove the emperor hadn't gone soft. Was trapped. If he ignored the violation, he would lose credibility with his own people. If he responded with force, he would undermine everything he had been trying to build. The council waited for his decision, the air thick with tension. Was called to the council chamber, wanted her perspective, but she knew it was also a test. What would the human advisor say when human crimes needed answering? "Investigate thoroughly before you act," said clearly. "Verify the evidence. Understand what really happened before you decide how to respond." Sneered, of course she defends her own kind. This is exactly why humans cannot be trusted. But listened. He ordered a full investigation, sending his own people to examine the evidence and interview witnesses. The council grumbled, but they couldn't refuse a direct imperial order. The investigation took 3 weeks. During that time, barely slept. If humans had truly violated the treaty, the peace might shatter, but she trusted to be fair, even if the truth was difficult. When the report came back, it revealed the truth. The attack had been staged, had arranged it himself, using hired mercenaries to attack the outpost and make it look like human forces. His goal was to restart the war and undermine the emperor. The evidence was undeniable, and several co-conspirators were arrested for treason. The council demanded execution, the traditional punishment for such crimes. Stood before his assembled court, with kneeling in chains before him. Everyone expected the sentence to be death. It was what tradition demanded, It was what would prove the Emperor's strength. But looked at who stood quietly to the side. He thought about everything she had taught him, about mercy, about choosing the harder path because it was the right one. Exile, announced. Permanent exile from the Empire. He will live, but he will never return to space. He will spend the rest of his life remembering that mercy is not weakness. The court erupted in shock. Many nobles protested loudly. How could the emperor show mercy to a traitor? It made no sense. It violated every tradition. Stood firm. Strength is not always found in the sword, he said, his voice carrying through the chamber. Sometimes it takes greater courage to show mercy, to break cycles of revenge and hatred, try to start a war through deception. I will answer him with truth and restraint. He turned to look at the assembled nobles. This is what the new empire will be. We will be strong enough to be merciful. We will be powerful enough to choose peace. Anyone who cannot accept this is welcome to join in exile. No one moved. No one spoke. And slowly, one by one, the nobles bowed their heads in acceptance. Later, in private, asked if he was sure about his decision. You could have had him executed. Everyone expected it. This might make you look weak. Perhaps, said, but you once chose mercy when you could have chosen revenge or indifference. That choice changed my life. How could I do any less? Felt something shift in her chest. She looked at this man who had once been a wounded soldier, then an emperor, and was now becoming something more. A leader who could change the galaxy not through force, but through wisdom. Thank you, she said quietly, for listening, for trying to be better. Thank you, replied, for showing me what better looks like. In the months that followed, the incident with became a turning point. The nobles who had been resistant to change saw that was serious about his reforms. More importantly, they saw that mercy didn't mean weakness. It meant having the strength to choose a harder path. His medical clinic expanded. She trained doctors in human medical techniques and learned from them in return. Ambassador visited often, amazed at how much had changed in such a short time. You're doing something remarkable here, told. You're building bridges that diplomats couldn't build in decades. I'm just being myself, said, helping where I can. That's exactly why it works, replied. And friendship deepened as well. They would take long walks through the palace gardens, talking about everything and nothing. She helped him understand human culture and thinking. He taught her about history and traditions. They challenged each other, supported each other, and trusted each other completely. One evening, as they watched the sunset from a palace balcony, spoke quietly. I never thanked you properly, not just for saving my life, but for everything since. You could have gone home months ago, but you stayed. Why? Thought about the question. She had asked herself the same thing many times. Because I think we're doing something important here, building something that matters. Peace isn't just the absence of war. It's understanding, connection, trust. That's worth staying for. Nodded slowly. I'm glad you did. I don't think I could do this without you. You could, said, but I'm glad I can help. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars appear in the darkening sky. Two people from different worlds, building a bridge between them, one choice at a time. 10 years had passed since first found a wounded soldier in the ruins of Nexus 7. The galaxy had changed in ways that seemed impossible back then. The Empire and the Human Federation had evolved from enemies to allies, working together on trade, technology, and cultural exchange. Was now 48 years old, her hair showing threads of gray. She held an official position as Keeper of Mercy, a role had created specifically for her. It gave her authority to oversee humanitarian programs across both and human territories. She had helped establish hospitals, negotiate aid agreements, and train medical personnel from both species. But she still ran her clinic at the palace. That had never changed. It was where she felt most herself, most useful. Emperor had transformed as well. The stern soldier who had taken the throne was now known as the Wise, a philosopher king respected across the galaxy. His reforms had changed society, making it less focused on military glory and more on sustainable peace and cultural development. They remained close friends, meeting almost daily to discuss issues both large and small. Their connection had become the foundation of the human alliance, a symbol that two different peoples could not just coexist, but genuinely respect and understand each other. Then the reports started coming in. Ships were disappearing on the outer edges of both and human space. Entire colonies were going silent. At first, everyone thought it was pirates or raiders, but then a few ships escaped and brought back terrifying news. A new enemy had emerged, the swarm they called themselves, an aggressive species that attacked everything in their path, taking resources and destroying anything that resisted. They didn't negotiate. They didn't communicate. They just consumed and moved on. Both the Federation and the Empire mobilized their fleets, but they realized quickly that neither could face this threat alone. The swarm was too large, too powerful, too relentless. An emergency summit was called. Human and leaders gathered to discuss a response. For the first time in history, they talked about a true military alliance, joint command structures, shared technology, combined forces. It should have been impossible. A decade ago, they had been enemies. Old prejudices and fears still existed on both sides, but pushed the proposal forward, and to the surprise of many, the human leadership agreed. The joint fleet began assembling, shocked everyone by appointing human officers to command positions alongside ones. He placed Admiral, a respected military leader, as co-commander with human Admiral. "We fight together or we die separately," announced to his council. "There is no other choice." Found herself aboard the command ship as part of the humanitarian team. Her role was to coordinate medical services for both species, ensuring wounded soldiers from both sides received proper care. It felt strange to be back in a war zone after so many years of peace, but she knew her skills were needed. The first major battle against the swarm was brutal. The enemy ships were organic, massive creatures that absorbed energy weapons and kept coming. The joint fleet lost dozens of ships in the initial engagement, but they held the line. Worked 20-hour shifts in the medical bay, treating wounded from both species. Human doctors worked alongside healers, sharing techniques and supplies without hesitation. The crisis had forced them to truly become one team. 3 weeks into the campaign, disaster struck. The command ship took heavy damage during a surprise attack. Multiple systems failed, and casualties were severe. Who had been coordinating the battle from the bridge was badly wounded when an explosion tore through the command center. Was in the medical bay when they brought him in. For a moment, time seemed to stop. She saw the blood, the burns, the same kind of injuries she had treated 10 years ago in a ruined medical station. But this time, she wasn't alone. She had a full medical team and proper equipment. "Get him on the table," she ordered, her voice steady despite her fear. "Prepare for emergency surgery, now." The medical team moved with practiced efficiency. Human and doctors worked side by side, stabilizing his condition. Directed them, her hands steady as she repaired damaged organs and sealed wounds. Hours passed. The surgery was delicate and complicated, but finally was stable. His eyes opened slowly, focusing on his face above him. "We've come full circle," whispered, his voice weak. "Once again you saved my life." "And once again I couldn't do otherwise," replied, her eyes wet with tears she had been holding back. Managed a small smile. "I'm lucky you found me all those years ago." "I think we're both lucky," said. Survived, and his survival became a rallying point for the fleet. The Emperor had faced death and lived. The Alliance would do the same. With renewed determination, the combined forces pushed back against the swarm. The turning point came when human engineers and scientists worked together to develop a weapon that disrupted the swarm's organic ships. The cooperation that had seemed impossible a decade ago was now saving both civilizations. After 6 months of hard fighting, the swarm was driven back. They retreated to unknown space, and the immediate threat was over. The Alliance had won, but the cost had been high. Thousands of soldiers from both species had died defending their homes. In the aftermath, made a proposal. He wanted to build a monument on Nexus 7 at the exact spot where it had found him. It would be called the Memorial of First Mercy, a reminder that the alliance between their peoples had started with one act of compassion. The dedication ceremony drew representatives from hundreds of worlds. The monument was simple but powerful: two figures, one human and one, reaching toward each other across a divide. At the base were carved the words, "From mercy comes peace." Stood before the gathered crowd and told the story. He explained how one human medic had risked everything to save an enemy soldier, how that act had changed his understanding of strength and honor, how it had led to reforms, to alliance, to the very cooperation that had just saved both their species. "Showed me that compassion is not weakness," said, his voice carrying across the assembled crowd. "It is the foundation of true strength. One person, armed only with mercy, changed the course of galactic history, not through weapons or threats, but through the simple choice to see an enemy as a person worth saving." Stood beside him, older now but still the same person who had made that choice so many years ago. She looked out at the crowd, humans and standing together, soldiers who had fought side by side, families from both species who had survived because of their cooperation. She thought about the young medic she had been, alone in the ruins, making an impossible choice. She had never imagined it would lead to this. She had just wanted to save a life. "I wasn't trying to change history," said when asked to speak. "I was just trying to do what was right. That's all any of us can do. Make the choice in front of us, the one that lets us sleep at night, the one that reminds us we're more than our fears and prejudices." After the ceremony, as the crowd dispersed and walked together to the exact spot where she had found him, the ruined building was still there, preserved as part of the memorial site. "Do you ever regret it?" asked. "Saving me. Your life became so much more complicated because of that choice." Thought about it. She thought about the danger, the political intrigue, the years away from the simple life she had planned. But she also thought about the friendships she had made, the lives she had saved, the peace she had helped build. "No," she said firmly, "I don't regret it. Do you regret asking me to stay?" "Never," replied. "You made me a better leader, a better person. You showed an entire empire that there was another way." They stood in comfortable silence, two old friends who had shared an impossible journey. In the distance, they could see a joint training facility where the next generation of soldiers, both human and were learning to work together. A young cadet was helping a wounded human trainee, supporting his weight as they walked toward the medical station. The human had twisted his ankle during exercises, and the had immediately stopped to help. Smiled watching them. "Look at that, they don't even think about it, they just help each other." "That's your legacy," said. "You taught us that mercy should be instinct, not exception." "It's our legacy," corrected. "You made it policy, you gave it teeth, I just planted the seed." As the twin suns set over Nexus 7, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold, pulled out the old ring she still wore on a chain. It was scratched and worn now, but still precious. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for remembering, for not forgetting that moment when everything changed." "How could I forget?" replied. "It was the moment I learned what it truly means to be strong. Some people change the world with grand gestures and mighty armies. You changed it by refusing to let someone die alone in the ruins." They walked back toward the transport ships together, two figures silhouetted against the sunset. Behind them, the Memorial of First Mercy stood as a testament to what they had built together. Years later, when historians studied the formation of the human alliance, they would trace it back to this moment, to a medic who chose compassion over fear, to an emperor who remembered that mercy, to two people who proved that even in the darkest times, one choice could light the way forward. The galaxy had changed, and it had started with a simple act of healing in the ruins of war. From that moment, everything else had followed: peace, understanding, alliance, hope. Had never wanted to be important. She had just wanted to help. But sometimes the smallest acts have the biggest impacts. Sometimes saving one life means saving millions more. Sometimes mercy is the most powerful force in the universe. And sometimes a soldier becomes an emperor who never forgets the person who showed him what true strength really means.